Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Rola. So Sam Boker from Department of Communities and Justice, a Community Engagement Officer. I want to thank you all for accepting our invite today. Thank you.
Just before we go forward, I do want to let you guys know that this is a recorded event. We did mention it during registration. This is so for those who have missed out on attending this event, you know, to be able to get that later on. Unfortunately, there is only a certain number we're able to hold in this platform. So yeah, so that way, if you know anyone who's missed out, you're also more than welcome to share this recording afterwards. Yeah. So we have now Nikki from Departments of Community and Justice. Nikki?
Hi, everyone. Rola, you're able to hear me before I continue?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikki Akwatan-Ruki, and I'm the Manager of Diversity Services at the Department of Communities and Justice. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land.
Nikki, you're on mute. Are you able to unmute yourself? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think when you mute everyone, I get muted as well. Yeah. So I'll try and keep an eye out. So apologies, everyone. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are meeting on Aboriginal land on various lands today, and to pay my respects to elders past, present, and any Aboriginal people that are joining us here. I'd like to say a very warm welcome to everyone. We are meeting under very different circumstances, but I think it's incredible that we are able to still meet and connect and use an online platform such as this. I would like to take some time to acknowledge the Southwest Sydney Domestic Violence Committee and thank them for their hard work. Including today's webinar, I think collectively they identified a need to bring us all together and to provide a platform in which we could share much needed information, particularly during this time. So thank you to all of them. I would like to encourage all of you to continue the discussion and collaboration that starts today. And as a department, we would love to continue connecting and continuing this discussion and this conversation with you. So that's it from me. I would like to introduce you to our moderator, Monique Dam, who is the Advocacy and Prevention Manager with Domestic Violence New South Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. So before we begin today, I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of First Nations peoples across New South Wales, and I'm on Darug land. I'd like us to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I want to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander friends and colleagues that we have with us today. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this land will always be Aboriginal land. Today, I'd also like to acknowledge the essential workers, the health workers, the domestic and family violence workers, the teachers, the police, supermarket workers, cleaners, parents, and everyone else in our community is working so hard to keep everyone safe and well during this challenging time. So thanks everyone for joining us today for this webinar organised by the Southwest Sydney Domestic Violence Committee. I want to thank the committee members who've done an amazing job pulling this webinar together. As mentioned earlier, my name is Monique, and I'm the Advocacy and Prevention Manager at Domestic Violence New South Wales, which is the peak body for specialist domestic and family violence services across New South Wales. We understand that there is a lot of uncertainty during this time for service providers and for people who are experiencing violence, and we're all hugely impacted by these changes. We're hoping that today, through this webinar, you'll gain some clarity around some of the questions that some of you have already sent through and your concerns so that we can all continue to support people who are experiencing violence. So today we're really lucky to have 7 speakers from a range of services that work with people experiencing violence. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat box and we'll try to get to your questions, but we do have a very large number of people joining us today, so please understand that we may not be able to get to all of the questions. If you can Also, try to keep your questions focused on the COVID-19 crisis. That would be great. So I just want to quickly introduce our presenters for today. So today we'll be having Senior Constable Alana Jameson from New South Wales Police, Fabienne Blanca from New South Wales Local Court, Kate Adams and Florence Cruz Montalvo from Legal Aid New South Wales, Graham Moore from Housing New South Wales at DCJ, and Georgina Campbell and Joanne Dobry from Child Protection Helpline and Domestic Violence Line, also at DCJ. Can I just check you can all hear me fine? Great. Okay. So first we'll start our discussion today with Senior Constable Alana Jameson. Thanks again for being with us, Alana. Can you please give us a quick update on how the COVID-19 crisis is impacting on domestic and family violence from the police perspective? Alana, are you there with us?
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I was muted. This is my first webinar, so bear with me. So those in the field that are watching today would probably know me as AJ. I generally go on a first name basis, although I wear a blue uniform, I'm human like everyone else. And the blue uniform just gets me a few extra powers. So the Southwest Sydney DV Committee, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to speak today and break the ice with my first webinar. I also would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal people of this land and pay my respects to past, present and future elders emerging, and specifically acknowledge the Aboriginal persons that are currently viewing us today. As a police officer in the DV field, I just want to express my gratitude to you frontline workers. You are the bread and butter of this field, and I genuinely learn from you every single day. To be in the DV field, it requires a really strong, emotionally intelligent, empathetic and compassionate person to be in this field. So working in this current climate, yourselves and I are finding it a bit hard, not only on the home front, but certainly in the forefront of this DV arena. So I just want to commend you all for putting the needs of others before your own, and also for teaching me so many things over the years. I've no doubt crossed some of the paths with you along the way. So thank you, and just remember to take care of yourselves during this time and that of your family as well. So getting to our first question, it relates to an update on COVID-19 and policing from a DV perspective. Essentially, in short, it's business as usual for police. We respond, react, support as much as we possibly can. We understand that COVID-19 is certainly, and the isolation restrictions are certainly putting more of a strain on the dynamics of a relationship and placing victims and families further at risk, certainly those that are in the same household as a perpetrator, whether it be unreported or reported to police. We're constantly reminded of paramount safety in the field for ourselves and that of other people. Obviously, the social restrictions do apply to us as well. We still have to wear our PPE when dealing with people, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we are first responders and we're here to protect the community. The DVSAT is something that has always been used, as we know, but we're putting a huge emphasis on the front line to use that effectively, given that, as we've said previously, there are concerns that there are victims behind closed doors at the moment that are isolated with their perpetrator, and that DVSAT is a really important way to link services in. We're certainly honing down on the communication, the contact details. So stressing to police that, yes, we know that you get their contact details, but you need to stress in this situation that given they may be living with their perpetrator and unable to leave, is there a better option? Email, better phone number, someone else's phone number to get that information across. So that message is being hammered down to our frontline police at the moment. That's for victims, obviously. Also the men's telephone counselling referral service. That's another mandatory thing that police have to do when speaking with an offender of domestic violence. We must ask them certain questions and get them referrals if we can. So that's another important thing that we're pushing home at the moment. Mobipol is certainly Mobipol is a Samsung phone, essentially, that all police are given at the start of their shift, and we are pushing for the use of this in the field, given that our resources are limited at times, given we have to protect hotels while isolation is in place as well. So a lot of our resources are being taken there. So this in the field allows us to do reports a lot quicker, and DVSAT on the phone as well for non-violence related incidences. So we've got these situations in place already, but these messages are coming loud and clear from the corporate sponsor right down to the domestic violence liaison officers in the field. ADVO compliance checks, we've ramped that up, I can tell you, especially the southern region. They've actually got a whole operation taking place, checking on those people that need to be checked. And as you know, or if you aren't aware, for an AVO compliance check to be completed, police must speak to both parties. So if they're in the home, certainly both parties are spoken to. We try to do that separately if we can. Given the current circumstances, that is easier than said than done. But by letting our presence be known at a home where there is an AVO in place, hopefully that message, along with other messages that I'll tell you about, is moving forward. And a couple of other things in relation to updates. We've set up some interagency meetings with police and DJs co-chairing. So we're there to discuss issues, trends and plans moving forward. Given the current climate, things always pop up. We've got certain powers during this time that have been given to police, as you would have heard, I'm sure, in the media a lot as well. There's a lot of information flowing down to police at the moment, and I can honestly say my inbox is a bit of information overload sometimes, but we get through it and we get it nice and clear to frontline. We've been told about emergency accommodation arrangements when it comes to defendants being evicted from their home due to an AVO condition. So we're referring those clients or those defendants at the moment to Link to Home Services, but we're negotiating what the best option is for that, because we acknowledge they need a place to go as well, but our priority is keeping people safe. That's the first question there, Monique. Done.
Thank you. Thanks, Alana. Okay, so that's really helpful to know that police is still continuing to really make sure that they're responding to reports of domestic and family violence and doing compliance checks. In terms of reports of domestic and family violence to police, are you seeing any changes emerging relating to this current crisis? And if you could also share what the police data captures and what it might not capture, that would be really helpful as well.
Okay, so essentially the media reports that have flown through have been coming from police data, have not been coming from police data, although Boxar stats obviously do. There has been minimal change, to be honest, and I've clarified this before speaking today. An increase has been noted in incidents where we've had to attend a location due to an argument or a report of some sort that doesn't involve violence. There's been a slight increase there, but in relation to domestic violence, where there's incidents of actual physical violence, there has been no change. Now, the stats that I can talk to today are based on Boxar stats, and I'm sure everyone in the room is well versed on looking at where DV trends are in statistics. But I had a quick look this morning myself, and basically there's been only a slight movement in change from March 2020 and in reference to March 2019. So we understand that there's reasons for that, and we're all in the room, we're all classes experts here. So we accept that there will likely be a delayed surge in reporting after the fact. We will wait and see whether that happens, but at the moment we're responding as effectively as we can. But the peaks that we thought would occur have not occurred. We've created a national and international dialogue exchange with our police colleagues, including New Zealand, and none of those police colleagues, including our national colleagues, have actually noticed any increase in domestic and family violence during this pandemic at this stage. So, as I said, we are prepared that there may be some unreported matters. I certainly urge people to report as quickly as they can, and we can start the ball rolling, but I do understand the limitations.
Great. Thank you, Alana, or AJ. And on that, that's really good to know that police is also liaising with colleagues nationally and internationally, noting there may be a delayed surge in reporting, and also that the data is capturing the physical violence, and that, as we all know, there are also other forms of violence like psychological, emotional, financial, and social abuse that may be happening in the home. So Alana, then AJ, the next question is around, we know, as you've said, that families and frontline workers are, during COVID-19, have found it difficult sometimes to stay in contact, to stay connected, and services are facing difficulties in continuing to support victims effectively. Can you advise any other measures that have been put in place by police? So you've mentioned increased ADVO compliance checks, referrals to Link to Home. Is there anything else that you could share with us?
Okay, I'm sure Fabian will talk to this a little bit, but whether the people listening today know or not, but pin-ups have actually been excused from attending the first mention of AVO proceedings at the moment. That means WDVCAS and DVLOs are still in touch with those victims where we were able to be to obtain oral instructions to do with the AVO conditions, but we do not expect them to enter the courthouse and into the safe room. And I guess from an ex-DVLO perspective, I probably see that as an opportunity to engage with that victim because the defendant still has to attend court. So although it's a short period of time, court can take numerous hours or a short amount of time, that would be an optimal time for services to get an understanding of when the first mentioned date of an AVO is and really look at engaging with that victim if able to, whether it be via phone or case management in the office or over a coffee. You guys know how to do your job, so just remember that little bit. AVOs, now this is a new one. We because of the COVID-19, there's been some law reforms, some amendments to the legislation. So AVOs specifically were in place for a period of 28 days only as a provisional, and then it had to go back to court prior to that date, prior to the 28 days. Some changes have occurred, and I'm just going to have to read a little bit off the paper here. So AVOs that have the mandatory conditions, including condition 4, which is must not be around the pin-up within 12 hours of consuming alcohol or intoxicating substances, and condition 10, which relates to firearms, not having possession of firearms, the return date of court has changed from 28 days to allow up to 6 months. So potentially that is a win-win for pin-ups. Whether COVID and this isolation continues past 6 months, I don't know. But at the moment, those matters don't have to go back to court for up to 6 months unless the defendant or the pin-up wishes to put forward a variation, in which case they can certainly get that to go back to court sooner. That only applies where there's no accompanying charges, okay? So that's AVO only, civil matters only. All other police issued AVOs where there's an exclusion condition or a no contact condition, they have a return date at court of 3 months, unless of course there's another variation put forward prior to that time, or they wish to revoke the matter or and so forth. Again, that only relates to civil matters that don't have any accompanying charges. Those changes were actually passed in late March. Okay, so we've had a whole month and a bit of those changes occurring. To put this into context, Tasmania has had similar legislation which has been in place for a period of 12 months. So, you know, we're sort of doing this because of the pandemic, whereas Tasmania take an even stronger view on AVOs. So I think we're moving forward slowly, but it's little baby steps. Some other some other positives which have occurred sort of tied in around where COVID came about, but was certainly a positive win-win during the situation, is police have the ability to vary an AVO and make it enforce immediately. So previously we'd have an AVO and you wished to strengthen that AVO. That AVO condition that you want was the strengthened one would have to go to court before it could be put in place. Police can now apply for a brand new AVO on the spot and it would supersede the previous one. So that was a new training material that's getting pushed out to police before COVID-19 came into play. So we've had a really large amount of messaging pushing down to police. So if there's really severe concerns about these victims that have a current AVO, that are in isolation, things are escalating, they may or may not reach the threshold where police can actually take investigative action, please, all of you listening, keep in the back of your mind that police have the ability to vary that AVO immediately. So it's simply taking out a new provisional police AVO, which supersedes the other one. So we can do it and we will do it. And if there's issues, please follow through, Monique, and we can follow those issues up for you. So that's definitely a positive, especially during this time. We've got some community service announcements that have been put forward to obviously push the message home that the hashtag is actually no excuse for abuse, and it's actually trending. My colleague Janelle had a light bulb moment and thought, we need to get on this social media bandwagon, and we did, and it's worked. So those messages have been put out before, but with the twist of we're not accepting COVID-19 or isolation as an excuse, and we are watching people and we are getting the word out. So I think social media, obviously, I understand some people are restricted from social media in a domestic violence context. However, some others aren't. So just seeing those messages constantly would assist. That's on our police page, police social media page. And the other thing is we've teamed up with Drinkwise, who have all the alcohol messaging that comes out. We've teamed up with them to promote that alcohol, especially the consumption being increased during this isolation period, will not be accepted. And then some support services for victims, perpetrators, females, males, to look for. And those are being displayed, or there's radio campaigns, social media campaigns, and I think it's moving forward to being a national campaign. At the moment, it's New South Wales based, but I believe it's gaining traction. It will be a national campaign. And again, my colleague in my team was the one that started that ball rolling. So she's amazing. Her name's Janelle. I'm sure you've all heard of her. And there likely will be some posters at bottle shops and things like that, just to get people thinking that, you know, it might be nice to have a drink, but there's a point where you need to stop and think about your family. And that's my answer.
Thank you so much, AJ. That's really good to know that police can take out our provisional AVO immediately. Rolla, do we have any time for questions?
Yes, we have some time for a few questions. So the first one being asked, that's for the police, is, has there been any evidence of increase of violence to those living in the community who are aged or have a disability?
No, if it's domestic violence related, the answer is no. But in relation to elder abuse, we actually have a portfolio holder in our command who could probably talk to that point. If I can, Rolla, get that information and forward that back to you, I can certainly look at that. That's no issue at all.
Yeah, no problem. So let's say if anybody has a question and our presenters need to go back and get that type of resource for you, we're happy to send out the emails for all of our attendees as well at the end of this. The next question we have is, how's the message being communicated to the CALD communities? Okay, so in my command specifically, we have a cultural diversity team, I guess you would say, and we constantly liaise with them about how messaging would look when it comes to their communities. We pass those messages down to the MECLOs. I understand not all commands have multicultural liaison officers, but those work closely with our domestic violence officers. So any messages we pass down to our DVLOs, they work with their MECLOs as they would with their ACLOs, as they would with their GLOs as well. So I believe we've got a campaign coming up that I'm working with the team to try and, it's hard to get specific text for each community because there are so many subsets of communities, but just I understand narrowing down of words is one of the things. But again, I'm not the expert in the CALD community field, but I certainly liaise with my team and Rolla and Sam. Just give you a quick call as well. Yeah, and the last question we have for you is there any way to request a copy of your AVO without attending the police station? Well, there's the court registry. We can print a copy off for you, but I guess we'd need to know your details. So we'd be confirming on our system who you are. I guess if you're linked in with a support service, we can certainly, if you get your support service to email us directly, then that's another way that we could flow a copy of the AVO through to you. The court registry, certainly, I think, yeah, there's sort of 3 or 4 different ways, but I guess we need to confirm that the person we're speaking to is the protected person in the matter or the defendant in the matter. No one else has privy to that information. So, if attending the police station is of concern, my advice would be to contact the DVLO at the police station and ask if you could potentially meet at a mutual place. There might be a local library or something, and the police officer can attend the library and, you know, leave, if it's an issue, leave it with the librarian or something, and, you know, give you a call back to say it's there's many ways we can work around that. I wouldn't be having your clients stressed about that matter at all. Okay, then thank you so much for that, Alana. Monique, I'll send it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, AJ. That was really insightful. And Thanks so much for sharing all the work police is doing, and that's great to know that police are being flexible and really trying to find creative solutions during this challenging time to keep supporting the community and people experiencing violence. Thanks so much.
No problem, Laura. Thanks for inviting me along. Marola, just make sure my details are passed on to everyone listening today. I'm in the team part-time, but my passion is talking with you guys and helping you guys do the best you can for the support of victims. So please remember my details.
No problem. I'll send out the details at the end of the session. Thanks, Alana.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Thanks
Enjoy the
so
day.
much.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're now moving on to learning more about what's happening in the local courts. So it's my pleasure to introduce Fabienne Blanca, who is a registrar at Fairfield Local Courts. Fabienne, are you with us?
Yes, Monique, thank you.
Perfect. Can you please give us a quick update from the local court perspective, and also let us know if there are any changes to any processes around relating to domestic and family violence due to COVID-19?
Thank you, Monique. The main, we're still providing services, but the way we deliver services at the moment is, can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the way we deliver services is very different these days. So the defendants encourage to send emails rather than come to court. The solicitors are sending us emails. As AJ mentioned, the PINOPs don't have to come to court. So a lot of our work is done through the email. I'll give you an example. If you're a defendant and you plead guilty, you can do so and complete. There's a form that we use for that reason. And if the magistrate is going to sentence the person to a type of sentence that requires their attendance, then we'll send out a letter to the defendant and ask them to turn up to court. So the idea is to minimise the number of people in the building, so there's social distancing and we're not putting anyone at risk. The other big change is that we're not having any hearing matters. So all the hearing matters for May, June and July have been cancelled. So we're only doing sentencing matters and we're doing mentions. So anything that's a plea of not guilty, we're still doing what are called brief orders. However, we're adjourning that for 3 months for mention because we're not sure how long the COVID-19 situation will continue. The other big change is that before you could turn up at any local court and sit in the court and listen to the court proceedings, you can't do that. When you get to the door, the sheriff's officers will ask, why you're here. So if you say, I'm here because I've got a court case, they'll ask you for their name and check on the list that you're actually on the list. So we have a call over court and we have the other courts. So in all courts, we've restricted the number of people allowed to enter the courts. In the main courts, we have up to 7 people. That includes the magistrates, court staff, police prosecutor. So we've got procedures, very strict procedures, so no one's at risk when they come in. Anyone else that turns up at the local court, our sheriff's officer will say, okay, why are you here? And usually the main reason they're allowed in is because they have an appointment to do some business with us. So people need to either email us or ring our contact service centre. We also have a direct number to the courthouse, and you can ring and we'll invite you into the building if we can't, deliver the service by talking to you on the phone. Also, the sheriff's officers have been given a lot of fact sheet, resources. So the other thing with COVID-19, as AJ mentioned, with AVOs, we're listing in 3 months' time. So let's say the police, you go and see the police, for whatever reason they won't issue an AVO for you, you can come, you've got a kit, you complete the kit, I'll ring you up. Also most likely make an appointment to see you. I'll prepare a complaint. The complaint will be listed in 3 months' time. However, don't be alarmed about that, because as soon as I've completed the complaint, I'll give it to the magistrate and ask for an interim order to be considered to be made. So depending on the seriousness of the matter, the magistrate may make an order. Also, the thing that hasn't changed is that if something happens and things escalate, you can call the police and say, I've made an application to the court, it's listed this time, or you can go back to the court and we can relist it before the 3 months are up. So the other thing is, whether it's COVID-19 or not, we refer your case to support services. So you'll have, the DVCAS, people like that contacting you and giving you the support that you need. So you're not on your own. That's the important message.
Great, thank you so much, Fabian. So you've already touched on this a little bit, but are there any changes or impacts in terms of victim survivors attending court in relation to DV matters, and are support people still able to attend?
As I explained before, we're very limited in the number of people we're allowed in the building, because we don't want to spread the COVID-19 virus, into the community. So so the victims don't usually attend unless they've taken out an AVO, on their own behalf. That would be the only exception to the rule. We had some people bring, support persons with them, but that's very rare at the moment. Most things are done in writing at the moment, and by emails or letters. So it's very much a different world. And usually pre-COVID, on a normal DV day, you'd have the DVLOs, police, you'd have the police prosecutor, you'd have the WDVCAS people, you'd have solicitors from Legal Aid Domestic Violence Unit. So you'd have, at least half a dozen, various services, also disability services. You'd have all these people here, which we don't have at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Fabian. So in terms of that,
sorry, one last thing. If there's an AVO and charges and the person pleads not guilty, the case will be adjourned for 3 months. Okay, because they're protected because the person is on bail, and the other thing is there's a provisional order, which so the victim is protected. We're not compromising the safety of the victim.
Yeah. Thank you, Fabian. That's really good to know that the safety of the victim is still the priority and is not being compromised. Is there anything else that you wanted to add in terms of any changes to procedure in relation to DV matters now that we're in the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I suppose we try and do things with as the least contact possible. But that's I'm finding that's not really a good way to go, because especially at Fairfield, a lot of our clients are from various cultural backgrounds, and they need the face-to-face contact. So although I'm ringing them up, I usually end up seeing them, you know, face-to-face. And also domestic violence is very emotional. You know, it's a big decision to come to court, you know, to start that process. You know, there's an element of reluctance because of the repercussions in taking out an AVO. You know, you might have to find somewhere else to live. The violence might get worse. You know, there's a whole lot of things that can happen. And so I find it's worthwhile for the victims to explain, you know, all the different things that could happen in court, refer them to support services, as I mentioned earlier, and talk about those support services, you know, give them reassurance, feel like they have, you know, someone to support them. With some of the pin-ups over the years, I've made sure, you know, I'm there, or one of my staff is there. You know, when they turn up to court on the day, I'll introduce them to the WDVCAS, you know, people. So it's not so daunting. It's important to make their experience, you know, comfortable and you know, not so daunting.
Thank you, Fabian. So in light of that, what can people do in the current circumstances if they're not, if that face-to-face support's not available? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I can ring them. They can send us an email. They can go through the contact service centre and leave a message. You know, can you please, you know, ring me? I want to discuss, you know, my situation. I have developed relationships with the support services. So if they go and see, you know, legal aid can contact me, and we can, you know, work out the best way, you know, to get that AVO done. That there's a lot of options. You know, services know how to contact me, so you know, we work together. If someone's reluctant to make that call, because as AJ mentioned earlier, if you're living under the same roof, you know, you need to be a bit discreet about what you're doing.
Great, thank you so much, Fabian. Rola, do we have time for any questions?
Yep, so we have time for a few of them. So the first question is, if a perpetrator doesn't open the mail or reads the letter, how does that person then get contacted to come to court?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? Well, the DVLOs do contact the victims before court. So that's how they would know to come to court. Usually the practice is usually the day before court, or close to that. The DVLOs will ring up and find and you know, have a conversation with the PINOP to see what's going on, you know, what orders they're seeking, if there's been any changes, and then they'll communicate also with WDVCAS, and between the two they'll let our prosecutors know, you know, what should happen with the case. So we don't send out letters to persons in need, to PINOPs. We won't do that because, you know, they might get beaten up if that happens. It's everything is done through the DVLOs and WDVCAS, and also if legal aid domestic violence unit is involved, it's all through that. So it's done discreetly.
Sorry. Okay, so also, what about cold communities? So in regards to sending emails, so for those cold community who don't have access to emails, what happens to them?
As I said, they can ring up. There's a telephone interpreter service. So I can have a conversation with them through the telephone interpreter service. In their communities, there's community workers that, you know, have collaborations with the various service. Also, as AJ mentioned, there's a MACLO at the various police stations. There's a DVLOs at the police station who can assist them.
Okay, and the last question is, can there be a court contact pathway during the COVID? So for instance, like phone numbers that can be created so this can be distributed to general staff?
Well, we have the 1300 679 272, which is a contact service centre. So they can ring that number and leave a message, and we'll ring them back. That's the way of doing it. That's probably the best way that we do that. With different organisations, they have my email and phone number, so they know how to contact me quickly.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Fabienne. Monique, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Fabienne and Rola. That was really helpful for everyone to know. So we now have two lawyers from Legal Aid with us today. Kate Adams, who is Senior Solicitor in the Domestic Violence Unit, and Florence Cruz Montalvo, who is a Solicitor at the Family Law Early Intervention Unit. So thank you both for being with us today. And we understand that Legal Aid has moved to providing information and advice over the phone or online. So could you please let us know more about how Legal Aid is continuing to support clients?
Thanks, Monique. Yeah, as you said, we have moved to phone and email contact. All Legal Aid offices at the moment are actually closed to clients. However, we're still working really hard to support clients with their legal and social needs. We're running phone advice from the DVU 5 days a week. We've got 4 solicitors rostered on each day. If a client needs an interpreter, we utilise the TIS telephone interpreting service. So the best way to describe how we're currently servicing clients is that nothing's changed other than we don't have a physical presence at court from the point of view of the domestic violence unit and the early intervention unit. So if a client has a legal issue or a what if question, or they need some guidance or social support, if they have a matter in court, or they need any other kind of assistance related to COVID-19 and or domestic and family violence, they can give us a call through Law Access. That's the main contact for Legal Aid at the moment. In relation to the local court and the service that Fabienne was talking about, where we have a presence there at most local courts on AVO list days, we are available for phone advice and assistance, and we've got a really good referral pathway in place with the courts, with the DVLOs, with the WDVCAS. So in terms of our duty service, which we run at the Family Court and the Federal Circuit Court, this is still available. We have a single entry point for that, which is through the Early Intervention Unit phone number. I'm happy to post these in the chat, but that one's 1800 551 589. In the Family Court and the Federal Circuit Court, we can provide a usual duty service, but if we're required to represent, those courts are currently essentially closed for mentions and smaller matters, and they're all set up now to appear by webcam. So it's a brave new world, but we are still providing a service. The FAS social support is also still available, again remotely. So that's social support at the family courts and the Federal Circuit Courts. They've got male and female support people available. We've got the family violence website, which has actually seen a 25% increase since COVID-19 started. So that's familyviolencelaw.gov.au. It's a brilliant initiative for Legal Aid Australia-wide. It has a number of functions for victims of domestic and family violence, including quick close. It can be translated into different languages. and there are fact sheets available for printing if needed from any of the information pages. Legal aid applications can now be processed electronically, and if clients, whether they're from the called community or have difficulties with technology, need help with it, they can call us and book in, and we can arrange telephone assistance for a legal aid application to be submitted. And otherwise, our referral pathways, like Fabian said, with the courts, with the WDVCAS, with community support workers, they remain in place. If people have suggestions on what we can be doing better, we're happy to hear it. But our main aim is to make sure that no clients are falling through the cracks. And certainly so far, I think we're doing a pretty good job in the circumstances.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate, for letting us know that Legal Aid is continuing to provide those services. You did note that you've seen a 25% increase in use of the Family Violence Law website. Have you noticed any other changes in the nature, the incidence or severity of domestic and family violence in New South Wales since COVID-19?
Similar to what AJ observed, anecdotally, because there seem to be less reports, we're not seeing an increase at this point in terms of court matters. And based on what Fabian said, and I won't go through again what's happening in the local courts, it could be that those listings are being pushed out. But in terms of figures, I don't have exact figures available from the domestic violence unit point of view. Like I said, there's a 25% hit rate increase on the Family Violence Law website. One figure I was able to get is that from 6 months ago, our telephone inquiries have increased 3 times. So there's been a 300% increase in the amount of phone calls that we're taking. So it could be that people are accessing services differently. The phone is an easy way to do it, and ordinarily pre-COVID-19 phone services were not largely available. It was generally face-to-face. But what we are seeing an increase in terms of the content of those calls is a lot of what ifs and planning questions. So there's a lot of how would I leave if I wanted to, what would happen with my kids, what about money, where am I going to live? We're seeing an increase in questions about pets. So it could be that there's a delay in reporting and that victims are just in the process of planning.
Thank you so much, Kate. That's really helpful to know, and that correlates with some of what we're hearing in terms of people accessing services in a different way, so through web chat or telephone inquiries. I believe 1-800-RESPECT and the New South Wales Rape Crisis Centre have seen increased contact via web chat. In terms of services provided to clients from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, have any of these services been impacted or have they changed?
I might hand over to Florence for that one.
That's Florence, yeah.
Thank you, Monique. So I'm part of the early intervention unit, like Monique said, but I'm also the family law solicitor with the refugee service. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the refugee service, it's a small specialist team within legal aid. We have civil lawyers and I'm the family law solicitor in the team, and we help clients who are in Australia on the refugee or humanitarian visa and have been in Australia for less than 6 years and have civil law issues or family law issues. So like Kate said, legal aid have suspended their face-to-face services. So the refugee service is still providing legal advice and assistance. It's just over the phone or by way of email. So I think that's in line with a lot of other services that have changed the method that they deliver the assistance that they provide. Myself, I've developed new ways to contact clients and have clients reach out to me, especially if they don't have things like access to emails, or they might not be literate in maneuvering the email system on their phone or computer. So just this week, I actually had a refugee client who needed to send me some documents so that I can assist him further. And he didn't know how to use his emails, but he did know how to use another messaging app. So I was able to communicate with him and provide him with assistance through Viber. So I think it's about looking at the way that we help our clients, but most importantly, tailoring that service delivery to them. So the refugee service can take referrals. We're still taking referrals. Clients can contact us directly by calling our refugee service line, which is 87136725, or you can help your clients by sending an email referral at the refugee service email address at legalaid.nsw.gov.au. We do have an Arabic speaker who answers our hotline on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And clients can call with a TIS interpreter, or just call and we can actually connect them with an interpreter for free. So the services we're providing are still the same. And in terms of asylum seekers, my understanding is that RACs who help asylum seekers, they're still delivering legal assistance and advice.
Thank you so much, Florence. That's really good to know that Legal Aid is working flexibly and tailoring service delivery so that people can keep getting support. So a question for Kate again. Is Legal Aid still providing online, or is Legal Aid providing online community legal education during this time?
Yes, we are. Our CLE unit are working really hard to keep the community educated at the moment, and they do have a strong focus on COVID-19 related legal issues. So at the moment, we've got a Law for Community Workers program, which is aiming to reach more workers, including those in regional areas, and that's actually facilitated by way of interactive webinar and podcasts. If anyone's interested in keeping up to date with it, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the community worker alerts, and that's available through the Legal Aid website. All webinars are recorded and they're also available on the Legal Aid YouTube channel. And in terms of if anyone was interested or wanted a CLE to be provided, then that's something that the CLA unit at Legal Aid can also provide. There's a form available on the Legal Aid website under the What We Do tab, and it's under workshops. They're happy to hear from any community worker about topics that people are interested in or would like more information on. And coming soon, I've been told, is that there will be some new webinars focusing on criminal law and children's court matters in the times of COVID-19, where there are two, watch this space. Sorry, we don't have a date available, but they are on their way.
Okay, that's really great. Thanks, Kate. So before, I guess we've already heard from Fabian as well, some of the changes in the courts. Now, is there anything else that Legal Aid, that either you, Florence, or Kate would like to add in terms of any changes in the temporary, so I'm guessing this is referring to temporary, provisional ADVOs or other court orders that people can obtain during this time?
So just in relation to like urgent orders that people can obtain through the family law courts, ordinarily before COVID-19, someone could go into the family law courts and see a duty solicitor with either the domestic violence unit or the early intervention unit, and we would be able to assist them with preparing that application. Since COVID-19 and our duty services have transitioned to over the phone, we're still providing that same assistance. So in a scenario where a parent, the primary carer of a child, if they need help with getting an urgent order for their child to be returned because the other parent has removed that child and is refusing to return the child, they can call our duty hotline. So it's the 1-800-551-589 number. We can help them over the phone prepare that application because the family law courts are still processing and hearing urgent applications. Urgent applications for children to live with them, for children to be returned to them as well. Recently, I actually assisted a mother who was in that same situation. I helped her prepare the documents over the phone, by email. I helped her electronically file the application with the court, and it was listed the following day. And then I assisted her in appearing for her at court over the phone. So they can still get that same level of assistance. It's just different now that we have these restrictions in place. So it's important for people to be aware that they can get those urgent applications and those orders relatively quickly. The family courts have also established specialist lists relating to urgent family law applications directly impacted as a result of COVID-19. So if someone falls within that scenario where a parent has retained a child because the primary carer is a nurse, for example, and they are concerned that the child might be at a higher risk of catching COVID-19, that might fall under that criteria to file an urgent application and for it to be listed fairly quickly with the courts.
Thanks, Florence. That's really good to know that people can still access support from legal aid for urgent orders in family law matters. Rolla, do we have time for any questions?
Yeah, so we have a few. The first one is there an increase in perpetrators making vexatious allegations about mothers in the family law arena that is not protecting the child adequately?
The short answer would be no. There will always be the few perpetrators who make vexatious allegations regardless of COVID-19. But from my point of view, I would have to say I haven't seen any increase unless Florence has.
Same. I haven't seen an increase in with that particular scenario. I think across both, parents and victims and perpetrators, I think there's just a general concern about the COVID-19 situation, and people are in a bit of a heightened state, but I haven't seen an increase with perpetrators making vexatious claims.
Okay. So the second question is, last week the Family Law Circuit stated that they were going to hear all new applications within 72 hours of lodgement. Is this happening?
What was the question? I couldn't hear.
Sorry, back to it. So so the Family Law Circuit stated that they're going to hear all new applications within 72 hours of lodgement. They want to know if this is happening yet or not.
Yeah, so I mean that's the national list I spoke about. We're colloquially calling it the COVID-19 lists, and the practice directions say that within 3 days of the application being filed, it'll be listed before a judge. I haven't gotten any any stats in relation to how that is going on. It was just established on the 29th of April, so it hasn't been running for very long. I don't know if Kate has any feedback from the courts or from practitioners in relation to that, but as far as I know, we're not sure how it's running. It's too soon, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with Florence on that. It's so new that we're yet to see it in practice. But in terms of the 72-hour listing, that is in relation to matters directly affected by COVID-19, not any parenting or property matter.
Okay, great. Just one more thing. So you guys mentioned a few numbers of services which frontline staff workers or victims can access. Is it possible to put those numbers into the chat box, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. Okay, Monique.
Thank you so much, Rolla. Thank you so much, Florence and Kate. We'll now move on to inviting our speaker, Graham Moore, who is Acting Team Leader in Housing at the Department of Communities and Justice. Hi, Graham, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Great, thanks for joining us. So Graham, could you please share with us how families can access temporary accommodation if they need assistance and can't come to the office? And how long will they be approved for to stay in that TA?
Okay, so obviously things have changed in the way temporary accommodation is provided. It used to be you had the option of going into your local office, housing office, or you could be contacting our Link to Home line or the 1800 152 152 number. Now for all initial temporary accommodation, so that's anyone who's currently not in temporary accommodation, it is by ringing the Link to Home line. So even though our offices are open, they're open for obviously limited number of people to come in. The expect contact the Link to Home line, and Link to Home will then conduct the initial assessment and determine the best outcome for that client. In the southwestern Sydney area, we've been lucky enough to secure additional rooms in a number of hotels, so we appreciate those providers coming on board to help us with a significant number of rooms, and these are pretty much running at full capacity now. We have seen a significant increase in the number of TA over the last 2 months, up around the 180% mark. Now, in regards to the length of time that someone will get temporary accommodation for, initially when they speak to Link to Home, it will be for 5 days. It used to be 2, that has been increased to 5 days, and with the expectation that somebody from a local housing office will then contact the client or the person within 48 hours of them being placed in with the provider. What happens then is after when we initially make contact, we will then obviously do a bit more of an in-depth discussion with the client as to their needs, why they're in TA, what supports do they need, and start working on a case plan with them. Now, there is no rush, I guess is the best way to describe it, to get people out of temporary accommodation. Before there used to be the 28-day maximum in a 12-month term. Even though we still be pushing for the 28 days, certainly there won't be any need or requirement to force them out if we're unable to find a suitable exit plan, whether it be private rentals, social housing, or any other form of housing that would best suit that client. The extensions of T are all managed by the local housing office, and pretty much I would say 90% of them are done over the phone now. We do not in most instances, ask a client to attend our local office, and any ones that do attend are usually by appointments only. So if someone turns up without an appointment, we will generally ask them, we'll either make an appointment for them to come back at a later date if we can't work with them at that time, or we'll ask them to go and make a phone call, or we'll advise them that we'll be contacting them, just to avoid as much as possible, and obviously the safety of the staff and of the client themselves. Now, at times, like I've said before, they are put into certain accommodation. It may be a hotel room. However, once we do that second assessment with them, we'll then determine if that accommodation is best suited for them. So that does not mean that client will stay in that hotel for a length of time. We may determine that there are more suitable accommodations to the client, such as supported accommodation or transitional accommodation, whatever we work out we feel is best for the client, working with the client. We also previously, or we still do, we have what we call terms and conditions that go along with every temporary accommodation. With our expectation is that the client will work with us to resolve their housing needs. This obviously pandemic has made things a bit more challenging in that aspect, being that we no longer have services coming into our office that can work with a client. So a lot of the stuff is now being done over the phone, and that includes working with our real estate. So where before we would used to send clients to say, go to this service, go to this real estate, see if you can find a suitable property. Now we'll be actually doing a lot of appointment bases ourselves. So we work a lot closer and do a lot more, I suppose, with the client than what we may have done in the past, just to sort of help them. And because we know the difficulty it is for everybody being moving around, getting around, and being able to resolve their needs. Just see. Just checking what anything else here. So I have mentioned before, if they do require face-to-face assistance, this will be by appointment only. Often we have clients that don't have or may not have a mobile phone or may not be contactable. What we'll do then is also we'll make contact with the provider and ask them to pass messages on to the clients for us. And that we find that is working actually quite well at the moment as well. Hopefully that answers your first question.
Great, thank you, Graham. That's really good to know that people can access an initial 5 days of temporary accommodation, and that it can be continue to be extended as long as they need that accommodation. So our next question is about women on temporary visas who are experiencing domestic and family violence. What can they access in terms of temporary and crisis accommodation?
This is a challenging one, because although some of our procedures have changed, obviously our policy hasn't in regards to people on temporary visas or non-residents, what they can access. Under the policy, they're not actually able to access social or housing products such as temporary accommodation, social housing, even rent start bond loans. So it does make it difficult. So in that aspect, things probably haven't changed as much. Link to Home, when they ring Link to Home obviously has access to a number of services that they would refer to, the special homelessness services, support services. So I suppose it's a very short answer, and it's probably not the answer everybody wants to hear, but a lot hasn't changed in that regards. We'll still try and support as best we can and provide the referrals as best we can, and work with the client in their vulnerable situation, but it hasn't changed in regards to being able to access housing services directly.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Just on that, I wanted to let everyone know that at DV New South Wales, we have been hearing a lot from members about, and DV, including DV services, that are concerned about, particularly for people on temporary visas who are experiencing violence. So we are running a survey in May, so it is live now, and I've sent it to Roller and Sam to send around to all of you. If you can please fill in the survey and share it widely. We're really trying to collect some data to show that there are barriers to accessing support for this very vulnerable cohort. So the next question, Graham, is around what assistance is available for older Aboriginal clients who are experiencing family violence in terms of housing?
In terms of housing, again, it's very similar in terms of what we offer most of our clients in regards to anyone experiencing family violence. We do have Aboriginal specialists that will get involved. So when we get an application or receive information regarding somebody who's experiencing, particularly an elder who's experiencing family violence, again, we will undertake the necessary referrals. We will work out a plan with them, whether it's an exit plan, safety, whether they're eligible for our rent choice products, such as Rent Choice Start Safely. We'll certainly, each area's got their own specialist, as I've mentioned. So a referral will be made to that specialist, who will then be in contact with the client to work with them, whether it's linking into obviously local they can access, or to help them through that. So the specialist has those connections, has those links, and we work with them then to identify what the best outcome is for the client, whether it's staying where they are, whether it's moving them to a safer accommodation, working with them through the different products of social housing, of private rental, whether we then link them into our aged care placements, which we can also make referrals on the client's behalf. So it's a lot of comes down to the discussion we have with that person, and working with them and the specialist to come up with the best solution for them.
Great. Thank you so much, Graham. That's really good to know that those supports are available. Rolla, do we have any questions? Some time for questions?
Yeah. Okay, so the first question is, there has been some conversation around hotels being full and women being turned away. Is this the case? And also, is there any other solution for it?
I'm not 100% aware of these situations. Obviously, there are a number of hotels. It varies day to day, their availability, depending on clients coming in and going. Link to Home obviously work very closely and have a number of hotels, other accommodations, and they would be doing everything they can to house somebody. It's no different pre-COVID as well. I mean, it's the same situations when your providers are full. You work with them, you work with the support services. And I know particularly through my experience with Link to Home, they will make a number of calls and try and find somewhere to house someone. Of one or not incidents, I'm not aware of any. Certainly I haven't been made aware of any. Doesn't mean it does not happening, but I know how Link to Home will be working to find suitable accommodation for the person.
Okay. The next question is that so I guess it was more of a personal experience where a client was given only one night's accommodation rather than 5. So like, is there certain, I guess, criteria to access the 5 nights rather than just being given 1 night?
My understanding is the first initial is a 5 nights, unless there are specific reasons, i.e. the client has had previous history with housing and there may be some previous issue or something that may have arisen, that there are instructions that the client is to only begin an initial night and then refer to a local housing office. Again, it does happen, but again, it comes down to previous history. Certainly someone presenting new wouldn't be given 1 day unless it was done accidentally, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay, and the next question is, historically, visa clients were being given 2 days for TA. Has this now been increased due to the COVID-19? I'm not 100% sure of the answer there, but my understanding anyone is now to 5 days for everybody. Only because obviously in terms of the current situation, it just gives particularly ourselves, local housing officers, more time to get in contact with the client, allows the client to get settled in and not be put under too much pressure when they're already in a vulnerable situation to have things done and sorted out within the first 2 days. So my understanding is, yes, it should be 5 days, but happy to confirm that. Okay. And get back to you. Yep, sounds great. And also, there's another question. Can women on temporary visas access refuges, if not other products of New South Wales housing?
They can certainly access refuges under the Specialist Homelessness Services. It's just because there's basically 2 types. There's temporary accommodation providers and specialist homelessness services. So yes, they can access specialist homelessness service. Now I know some of them have limitations on how many they can take, but certainly that's where Link to Home and even our local officers will be contacting these refuges to try and support the clients.
Okay, and the last one is there any interpreting service provided when calling for those with limited English?
Yes, there is. We go through, and now off the top of my head, who it isn't. Particularly if they attend, the officer will give them a number to call. But yes, there is an interpreting service. If they ring the 1-800 number, either 152 152 or the other contact centre number, which is 1-800 422 322, they'll be asked if they need an interpreter and will be put through to an interpreting service. We used to have them in office, but of course, under the current situation, there aren't any in the office. But yes, they can call a service, an interpreter service.
Okay, great. If you're just able to put those numbers into the chat box, Graham,
sure.
Just so the participants could have that. And Monique, I'll send that back to you. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Rolla. Thank you so much, Graham, for all that information. That's really helpful. So we're now lucky to be joined by Georgina Campbell, who is Manager of Client Services, and Joanne Dobry, who is Manager of Practice Support for the Child Protection Helpline and Domestic Violence Line at Department of Communities and Justice. Welcome, Georgina and Joanne. Are you with us?
We sure are. Thank you, Monique. It certainly is a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk to everybody about our service. So thank you for inviting us along. Just in terms of the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line, for those who aren't aware, the Domestic Violence Line is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week telephone counselling and crisis intervention service. So we help our clients at risk of violence with accommodation, support and referrals, linking people in with police, solicitors and other support as required. So being a telephone service, we haven't been as adversely impacted by COVID-19 as many of our participants in the audience have been who deliver face-to-face services. However, obviously a large part of the work that we do is through support and referral to many of you on the line at the moment. So initially, I think when we first went into like social isolation and lockdown, we were impacted more adversely because we didn't really know when we were referring someone, you know, how that was going to impact and how the client could engage with those services. But I think, and I'm sure most people would agree, that that seems to have eased off quite a lot now, and we've all adapted and adjusted our services accordingly. So at the moment, other than the fact that we're working remotely, so that creates some challenges, as I think most of the presenters today have been working remotely as well. So there's different needs to adapt our service system in that regard. But in terms of the call volumes and things like that, they've remained steady, and we've been able to work with our support and referral services to provide services to women. One of the things that we have been mindful of is the impact of social isolation, particularly on people's mental health, and how that then translates
Georgina, I think you're on mute now.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, okay, I'm not sure at what point we went on mute, but anyway. So one of the things that I was just talking about earlier in the piece was that when we are making referrals for women who are ringing our line, is that we're very mindful of the impact of social isolation, and particularly on mental health and things like that. So if we are, for example, putting someone into temporary accommodation, we're working, I suppose, extra hard with our support services to make sure that the support goes hand in hand with that, that we're not just putting people into accommodation without that additional support that perhaps DV, RE or other support services could provide for people. The other thing that we have done a little bit differently is the way in which we engage people, because of course now we're screening much more readily around immediate safety for people, and we're looking more at risk assessing and exploring perpetrator behaviour that might be escalating earlier on in the piece in our phone calls. I will talk a little bit more about that when we talk about how we're reaching out to vulnerable women, but I'd like to now hand over to Joanne to talk a little bit about the Child Protection Helpline.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having us here. As Georgina said, I'm Joanne Dobry, and I'm the Manager Practice Support here at the Helpline. As you can see, Helpline is open. That's where we are today at the moment. We do have 400 staff at the Helpline, so it's quite a big machine, but we've managed to have 90% of our staff working from home, first time ever that it's happened. And I guess the message, part of my role has really been looking at how we can look after our staff. So the message for our staff is, although we are physically distancing, but we continue to promote social connectedness. We believe very much that we are the people that we serve. So looking at innovative and creative ways in supporting our staff working from home has been really important. So for the helpline, as you all probably know, we're a 24/7 contact centre. And as Georgina mentioned, it's still very much business as usual for us. Our after-hours response team, who basically their services kick in after our community services centres close, after 5, during weekends and during public holidays, they still continue to work across New South Wales. And obviously they still continue to activate our casework staff when we need them. So what's important to note is that we really rely on mandated reporters such as yourselves in the community to provide us with information to keep children and their families safe. So it's important that for you as reporters that you continue to communicate what your worries are to us. So child protection services in our districts are still visiting families and they're still assessing safety and risk when a report to the helpline meets risk of significant harm. And they continue to provide supports as well. So in terms of DCJ, we've provided quite significant and updated practice advice that incorporates how we manage social distancing and other risks associated with COVID-19. Another thing we do at the helpline is we've started to work in partnership with our COVID-19 response team. So they actually are part of our business called commissioning, and they look after those travellers who are quarantined in hotels after they've arrived from overseas. So we provide consultation in terms of any child protection matters. We received quite a number of really unique, I suppose, unique reports and instances where we continue to work with our police colleagues. So there's been lots of reports that we've received to do with children and young people who are not attending their distance education, who are actually found loitering in the streets or visiting and not social distancing from their friends. So they're quite unique reports that we haven't received before.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanne and Georgina. That's a really great overview of the work that DV Line and Child Protection Helpline continues to provide. So what are some of the ways that we can reach vulnerable women who are, without putting them at additional risk in the current situations? I'll open this to you, Georgina.
Sure. Thanks, Monique. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to say here. So firstly, communities and justice, as I think the descriptions that Joanne and I have given, from the New South Wales domestic violence line to the helpline to the districts and how we're delivering service, it's varied. So we all have different roles. And therefore, it might be a different approach depending on what service you're working with. In terms of the broader picture, the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line has been very heavily involved with the Attorney General, Women New South Wales and other groups as well in terms of doing a lot of media work. So putting out messaging through social media campaigns. The Attorney General's put out some messaging as well around maintaining a strong presence in the community and giving, I think especially for isolated women, giving key messages that social distancing doesn't mean that they can't leave their house. Social distancing doesn't mean that or isolation in their home doesn't mean that they can't access essential services and things like that. So there has been quite a strong media campaign, and I know that the Commonwealth is, if it hasn't already, I think it might be this week, are releasing another campaign with strong messaging around domestic and family violence and really promoting ways that people can seek support and get help. The other aspect of that is around how we safety plan with people. And so for us, when we're engaging with callers at the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line, we are acutely aware that women will be home with perpetrators more often than not at the moment. And we've got a duty of care to demonstrate greater flexibility around if it's safe to talk and safe to intervene, or how we should intervene when it's not safe. So even while the perpetrator's in the house. So it still could be safe for us to speak to women while the perpetrator is around. And some of the lines of inquiry that our staff take are, is the perpetrator asleep or occupied? Are they in another room? Is it safe to be able to go for a walk and things like that? So, and we like to establish that from the beginning. There's also strategies which I'm sure a lot of the services on the line today are also using. So there might be a word, a trigger word, if it's not safe for the person to say for us. We like to establish up front if there is, if they would like us to call the police, or that if we're concerned that we might call 000 on their behalf. So sometimes, like the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line does give us when you ring, the option is to remain anonymous. One of the things that we have been doing is seeking to request information if people want to give that, because if they are put in a situation of danger, we want to be able to respond appropriately, and having people's number or name or address does help with that. So those are the kind of strategies, in short, that we're trying to do, but alongside of also exploring with women who call, what way the violence or the perpetrator might be escalating. Are they escalating, and how can we assist with that? Okay.
Thank you, Georgina. So similarly, what are some of the ways that we can continue to support children and young people who are at risk of domestic and family violence? And particularly, as you've mentioned, we know that internet or their phone usage might be monitored. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so as Joanne has explained, and probably will explain in some of the other questions that we have, we'll respond to later, that child protection services are still visiting children and families in their homes. So we do have an element of visibility there, I suppose. However, we all know that children may not be attending school or daycare, and they might be less visible to, safe people in the community, not continuing with sport and things like that. So for us, one of the things that we do as an agency is a lot of safety planning with family, including perpetrators. And so we would be incorporating that around the child's experience. We often interview children and talk to children. So we'd listen to kids about what they're doing, what's happening in their home, do they have any fears? We have a whole range of tools and resources, such as like a 3 houses tool, that we would use to help understand how a child's feeling and how we can better help them. One of the things that we would be doing is to helping children to establish a safety network, and even though that can be quite challenging now because of the reduction in networks for people, but there still is a lot of scope there, and obviously for us we work with adults as well, and so we would be working with adults around safety planning and identifying key issues. And one of the other tools that we would use is to really sort of activate and work with families on what some of the networks are that they can currently use, even during these periods of social isolation. So it might include professional networks. Even if there's less face-to-face interactions, there could be a whole range of other ways that professionals can still maintain engagement with families.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So here's a question for Joanne. For family visits where the children are in out-of-home care, can parents have physical contact with their children?
Thanks for that. I think in terms of the message that Georgina and I really want to convey to all of you is that despite the restrictions and the government restrictions with COVID-19, I think it's really important that as practitioners we continue to do what we do best, which is actually provide dignity to families, which is build relationships, and paramount to that is keeping children safe. So anything that we had been doing prior to COVID-19, we would still be doing now. So in terms of, best practice. So social distancing is really simply about physical distancing and making sure that we keep up with our hygiene. It doesn't mean that distancing our children from the most important connections, and we know that family time is so crucial to the identity of all children and young people in out-of-home care. So it's important that we remain child-focused. So absolutely, if a mother wants to cuddle or hug their child, she should absolutely be able to do that during family time all day, every day. And obviously, we still would do the sensible things, such as, that our contact workers would ask, prior to contact, are you experiencing any flu-like symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone who's come from overseas? So the very, very basic questions that we would ask, we would absolutely put in place prior to any of that happening. But absolutely, really important to note, if parents want to cuddle their children, they should absolutely they have their parental rights to absolutely do that. I think it's important for us as well in terms of messages that we provide our parents is that whatever changes there are, if there are any changes, is that they're temporary. But the importance is for parents to continue to stay connected with their connected with their children and in contact with their caseworker. And obviously, like I said before, that we always will continue to follow government and health advice closely so that we can commit in ensuring safety for everybody. Children, like I said, children need to stay connected with family members and community as well, because we know that we want to continue to support their sense of identity and their sense of belonging and their security to reduce the feelings of worry and loneliness. We continue to look at creative methods, obviously, because we know that a lot of what we're doing now as well is in uncharted territories to support these connections. So many are in digital formats. I mean, Georgia and I think have gotten a lot better in, whether it's WebEx or
tech savvy,
being tech savvy. So which some of us can be a challenge for some. So obviously we use methods such as all of our caseworkers have got mobile devices. So whether that's iPads or their mobile phones, so we're able to do video chat, Skype, WhatsApp, FaceTime. We also have verbal options such as phone as well. We do we've got photo sharing apps. We look at, families sharing their music playlists. We look at gaming apps as well. Letters are also really important at this time. Playing online games together, reading a story over the phone, and making plans for the things to do together for when they see each other again. So I really wanted to say, to add that the helpline is a contact centre. So it's important for us to know significant information from all of you as our community partners, so that we can include that in our reports, so that we can then convey that to our community services centres. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's very reassuring to know. So another question for you, Joanne. How are children, so you've touched on this a little already, but how are children being kept in sight? How are safety plans being developed if the perpetrator is in the same home? And are child protection workers continuing to provide in-home visits?
Look, absolutely, they absolutely are. I think it's important to note, like I said before, that it's still BAU for many of our community services centres in our districts. We are absolutely still citing our children and young people that are reported to us, and safety plans are still being developed, even if the perpetrator is in the home. So we continue to work under the principles of our New South Wales practice framework. I'm sure many of you are aware of or have heard of that before, where relationships create change and restore dignity. So it gets us to work with women who experience violence and really recognise their acts of resistance as well. Social distancing and isolation has impacted on the time that we're able to spend with families, but it's important to note that we undertake collective and informed assessments to ensure that safety and well-being of children is still paramount during that assessment period. So other steps we've taken due to the COVID-19 restrictions have been negotiating a time and place to meet. So some families are worried about allowing DCJ in their home, but we also obviously stress to them that we still need to access their home. So we might meet them in the park, or we might meet them outside, but we still tell them that we absolutely still need to access their home in order to conduct our assessments. But obviously we try and keep it as brief as possible as well. Asking the family in terms of what they're comfortable with is really important as well. You know, some of them might prefer that the majority of the assessment is outside. We're okay with that as well. Talking hygiene to children and families, and obviously letting them know that it's important that we keep our hygiene, and you know, and vice versa. Planning together about alternatives moving forward in terms of whether FaceTime or video calling will be practicable in the next few visits that we have. It may not be appropriate to get everyone on the table, but it's important that we speak to the right people to support families in creating change. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question for you, Georgina. How can we support clients who are on temporary visas, who have no access to Centrelink, including no access to special benefit or to housing, to leave a violent perpetrator?
Okay, thanks, Monique. I have to say, like you, this is certainly an area for us at the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line that we have particular interest in, because we do recognise the vulnerability of this group in particular. So we always try and have a no wrong door approach. So I think support services for women on visas we can still access, but I think it's accommodation and financial support where there's incredible gap. So some of the things that we have utilised obviously is we have a very small sort of amount of brokerage money, so you know, we do tend to use that more on more with women who are on temporary visas where there's no other support available. But I think we did touch on previously where with Grantham Housing that there is up to 2 nights, possibly 5 under COVID, that women on visas can currently access. When we're placing people in temporary accommodation, like I think I touched on before in one of my responses, we do like to make sure that we have a lot of wraparound support, because often our experience at the DV line is that women who are on temporary visas are particularly isolated. Sometimes we'll also like to look at what community supports we can engage. Is there a network or other community supports that can help break through some of that isolation as well? The other thing that's quite important, I think, to note is that services such as victim support can still provide assistance to women who have experienced violence and need support. So they do have an immediate needs package. So, for example, if someone rings and they're on a temporary visa and they've experienced violence, we can support them at the New South Wales Domestic Violence Line to put in an application, and they can get some assistance through there. The other thing that's noteworthy is that the Red Cross is currently providing support for people who are on visas. So that's temporary visas and I believe student visas as well. So that's certainly worthwhile for people in the chat today who are working with women on temporary visas to see what support might be available through the Red Cross. And that it's really around urgent needs such as food, medicine, crisis accommodation and things like that.
And I think Immigrant Women Speak Out provide that as well.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Georgina. On that, regarding access to Red Cross, a few days ago, actually, Red Cross was saying they still haven't received funds from the federal government. So currently they have a backlog. I think a few thousand people have already contacted them seeking emergency relief, but they have definitely said that they will be prioritising people who are eligible, include people who are on temporary visas experiencing harm, such as domestic and family violence. And again, just for everyone who's on the call, Domestic Violence New South Wales is running a survey this month. So if you could please complete this survey if you are supporting or receiving requests for support from people on temporary visas. We also really welcome any case studies. If you're seeing there are any particular barriers for getting support for your clients, if you send us the case studies, we have previously sent those case studies to the relevant ministers and departments. And we're also working with the media as well on this. So our next question, thank you. Our next question is also for you, Georgina. What's available for single women who are experiencing domestic violence, who, I think this actually relates to the previous question, so who have no access to income and who require temporary accommodation if there are no vacancies? So I think this is relating to if single women are facing any barriers in particular compared to women with children who may be prioritised.
Yeah, certainly that's not like the experience that we're having at the domestic violence line. So we would obviously encourage women to get access to Commonwealth benefits, which if they're on not on a visa, then they should be entitled to that. And we would book them in to either refuge or linked to home, which at the moment, as we've talked about, is 5 nights or more, given we're in the COVID-19 period, and so there's a lot more flexibility around that. And in terms of support services, I mean, certainly not at the domestic violence line. We haven't experienced issues in relation to this. So for us, it is something that would be business as usual in terms of linking people who are single or not single into available supports and accommodation.
Okay, that's great. That's really good to know. Thank you so much. Rolla, do we have any questions, some time for questions?
Yes, we do. So the first one is, so it says, I've made numerous reports about different patients prior and during this COVID-19 time. I found these reports have been closed at the helpline, whereas normally these issues would be forwarded to the local CSC for assessment. Has the threshold of risk changed?
No, it hasn't. So the threshold hasn't changed. So what we would really strongly sort of advise people is that when they call with their concerns, or if they choose to e-report through the mandatory reporter guide, that they provide lots of details. So we do receive a lot of reports that don't have a lot of detail in them. And so when we're screening, we use structured decision-making tools, and when we're screening, they may not meet the threshold. That would then, of risk of significant harm, which we would then send those ones obviously through to the local office. So my recommendation would be to gather lots of detail, direct quotes and things like that, with who, what, why, where and how of that particular situation. And if you're not sure in relation to, like, if it's something that, you've got a concern or a worry for a child or young person and their family, but you're really not sure how to articulate that into an e-report, please call then the helpline, because the trained staff that will take that call will help you explore the concerns and the impact of harm on that child.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well. I think the more information you can provide us that will really give us a good picture of the lived experience of the child is really helpful. So like what Georgina said, if at all possible, quotes that the child or young person may have said, how they have felt, it really means a lot to us in terms of that. We use what we call a screening and response priority tool, which sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but it really talks to the lived experience of the child. And I think I'm also curious in terms of that comment, if it was closed at the helpline, which means it's a non-ROSH, or if it was closed at a community services centre, which means that they've decided not to allocate it. So I would be curious to find out where it was closed as well.
Okay, so the next question is, if the helpline are making cold referrals to community services and the community services can't get in contact with the client due to safety reasons, what's happening with these women and children?
So in terms of, so when at the helpline we are the one contact point. So for the screening and assessment for risk of significant harm, if it meets that threshold, it does go through to the community service centre, and then if it doesn't meet the threshold, but there's an open case at the community service centre, it still goes through to them, obviously, and we all operate off the one system, which is Child Story. In terms of once it gets to the community service centre, it is reviewed and assessed as to whether it will receive a face-to-face response or whether there is another option. So, you know, we obviously utilise a lot of other support services, family referral services or other services that are funded to provide, such as Youth Hope and, you know, Uniting provide a number of services for families. So I hope that answers that question.
I wanted to add to that as well, is that once a community services centre makes a decision to allocate the matter to a caseworker, which means that they knock on the door and try and visit the family, we actually have, as part of the structured decision-making tool, it's actually time frame. So we have a time frame as to how long we should take to do conduct a safety assessment, and also how long we should take to conduct a risk assessment as well. So we absolutely, it's in our best interest, and we're mandated to actually work within those time frames.
Yes. And if the reporter has left their details, but the community service centre can't get in touch with the family, they will contact the reporter again, and they may well contact the reporter again before they go out to gather further information. That's quite common.
And I think I wanted to add to that as well. I think what's important for all of you to know too is that collective accountability. Often reporters who are reporting to us about their worries are the people or the individuals who have knowledge of that family. So it's really important for you to partner with us, whether at a helpline stage where it's right at the beginning of the journey of the child or young person, or when it's actually allocated at a CSC. So it's in our best interest and yours as well to collectively work together.
Okay. And have you seen a reduction in rush reports since schools aren't seeing children face to face?
I think that like schools, so in terms of our reporter community, so we obviously have mandated reporters, and then we have the general community who also provide reports. So schools and police are definitely our biggest mandated reporters, but the third group is actually the community. So there certainly is, like during every school holiday period, and certainly whilst there hasn't been visibility of children who aren't at school, there has definitely been less reports from those service providers. However, there is still, we're still receiving many, many reports from the community and from other mandated reporters.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Monique. I'll send that back to you.
Thank you, Rola. Thank you so much, Joanne and Georgina. That was very helpful. So we're coming towards the end of our webinar. I just wanted to give you all a very quick overview of some of the things that DV New South Wales is hearing from our members, which are domestic and family violence services, in terms of the impact of the crisis on the people that they're supporting. So what we've been hearing is that there's a risk of increased violence in terms of the frequency of the violence because of further isolation from work, from school, from friends and family, and from other support networks, and having to physically be in the same space for longer periods of time. We're hearing that there are greater barriers to leaving a violent partner or family member because of potentially a loss of income or fears around the risk of contracting or spreading the virus if they access a service. We're also hearing that people are facing increased difficulties in making an exit plan and supporting and getting the support that they and their children, and if they have any animals, the supports that they might need to be able to safely leave together. There have been fewer opportunities in terms of time where people can safely access telephone and online support alone because they are being isolated with the perpetrator, or otherwise children are at home, and so people are finding it harder to find that time that they can use for themselves. We're hearing that because of the reduced face-to-face community outreach and education and group activities, those are the kinds of soft entry points for support. So we are hearing some services are concerned that those are no longer available in a lot of cases. There are also some additional communication barriers when people have to use the phone instead of face-to-face interpreters, and that can add stress and difficulty for people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And concerningly, we're also hearing that some perpetrators are starting to use the risk of contracting the virus as another tool of power and control, so making threats to force a person out of the home and put them at risk, or saying that they're going to put their family members at risk if they leave and go and stay with them. We're also starting to hear that perpetrators might increase the use of financial abuse because of the additional financial pressures that are happening now, and that there may also be increased misuse of alcohol and drugs, and how that can potentially contribute to an escalation of sexual, domestic and family violence. So we're really just trying to monitor and hear from our services what they're seeing, and really would love to hear from any of you if there's anything else that you're seeing in your service that you'd like to bring to our attention. In terms of culturally and linguistically diverse groups who are at higher risk because of the crisis and post this crisis, again, we're really hearing that people on temporary visas, because of the lack of access to income, to healthcare, housing and other supports, are at risk. Older people who are cold because of the high risk of more serious consequences from contracting the virus. People with disability who may have reduced access to disability supports, and again, who may face more serious consequences if they contract the virus, meaning that might be used as a tool of control. And finally, we're really trying to keep our ears out for children and young people who might be at risk, including young LGBTIQ people who may not be attending school and may be less connected to friends and other family members. So we were going to move into a panel, but we've only got a few minutes to go. So I thought I might just ask if any presenters have anything else they wanted to add, or I'll move into mentioning that we'll have a survey that Rola's going to send around, and to thank the presenters. Does anyone want to add anything, or Rola or Sam? Okay, so just to let you know, Rola will be sending out a 5-minute survey that you can fill in, and they'd really appreciate hearing feedback from you on how you felt this webinar went. Was it helpful? Was it useful? That would be really great if you could fill in that survey. We're also really grateful to all the presenters who presented today. Thank you so much for giving your time. We know it's a really challenging, difficult and incredibly busy time for everyone. So we really appreciate you taking that time out to be with us all today. And I would especially like to thank the Southwest Sydney Domestic Violence Committee members who made this webinar possible. We've had over 100 people join us, and it wouldn't have been possible without all of the work that you put in. So I'd like to thank Zual at Green Valley Liverpool Domestic Violence Service, Susan, who's at the Women's Homelessness Support Services, Joanne, who works at Services Australia at Centrelink, Lily at DAMEC, Maria, who works at the Southwest Sydney WDVCAS, Rola and Marie at Core Community Services, and Sam at Department of Communities and Justice. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Rola or Sam, as we wrap up?
I just want to thank everybody for attending, and a special thanks to our presenters, and of course for our moderator, Monique. You've done amazing, and the information received today were really useful, I think, for all the stakeholders. Again, we'd love to hear back from you on the survey so we can try to tackle other things or issues we didn't mention today, and try to invite other stakeholders who are very important for your work. Again, thank you, Monique, for doing an amazing role today, and everybody else as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And could I also remind everyone, if you do work with people on temporary visas, DV New South Wales is running a survey this month, and we'd really love your inputs. And thank you so much, Rolla and Sam.
Thank you. And I think we will stop the recording now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.